Okay, I think we're live, and I think I need to hit go live on Instagram, right? Yes,
Uh,
I see it. I see it. Okay, now we're live everywhere. Welcome. We're
are
seeing a
we
lot
live?
of viewers right now. I think we are.
I don't see it on the
Hmm,
on the feed.
let's see. Okay, I see it.
Oh
I
no,
see
we
it
are.
on
We are.
YouTube.
We are live.
Okie dokie.
And live from New York, it's Saturday night.
Saturday night. Sorry. So this is a special live stream that will become an episode on the podcast, I've decided. Bonus episode, of course. So, with me is my friend Elijah Thomas, and we are doing this live stream to promote your newest short film that is going to be featured in the G Fest video contest of this year. It's a hot contender. Everybody's saying it's a shoe-in for first place. We're hearing big things. And not only are we going to talk about it, but we are going to take a look, an exclusive sneak peek at the film. It'll be a first to the public, from what I understand. And then the next time the public will get to see it is at G Fest, which is not really the public, it's the private, because you have to pay to get in. So I've got a lot of questions. How would you like to start off? Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit? Of course, we'll do your extended self-promotion at the end, as always, but brief introduction for those at home.
Yeah, so my name is Elijah Thomas. Most of you probably know me as the host of Kaiju Conversation, but outside of that, I do a plethora of things. Most commonly, I think I can say I'm a writer, but more so than that, I'm also a filmmaker. I have pro- I've produced a handful of short films. I've entered into the G Fest video contest. My hair is awful. I'm so sorry. um, I've entered into the G Fest contest 4 times. My first time being in 2018, second time being 2019, third time being 2023, and now 2024. I have my newest short film, Edo Kami No Gyakushu. So I wrote, produced, directed, edited, and did most of the behind the scenes stuff for it. But I did have a couple people help me with it. One was standing currently. Um, and so yeah, I do a lot of things, sometimes too much, based off of recent events. Maybe sometimes it is a little too much, but
It's the official
yeah.
diagnosis now. You've done too much.
So I guess that's really a overview of what I do without getting too pedantic and specific.
So, as you mentioned, this is not the first time that you've entered the video contest. Have you ever won the video contest?
I've not. My I think my approach has not been something that they like. So the first two I did admittedly are awful. I hate them. Um they were a duology, a planned trilogy, but I scrapped the third one. I was like, no, this is stupid. I'm done with Godzilla fan films. They were called Quasar. Uh, the first one's pretty bad. It was actually a school project that I like retrofitted into like this short film that at the end of the day it didn't help it that I retrofitted it. It just was worse. And then the second one I decided to be a little different, and I actually like used some real actors. I went and I filmed on a couple locations. Um, which I thought was better, but I think it's still a little lacking. I think it was a decent first attempt at actually trying to do some sort of film thing. And then, so neither of those won. Actually, the second one didn't even get shown. They had a mishap at the G Fest showing, and it just didn't get shown. Oh, it was really frustrating. And then we go to last year, 2023, where I put in SOS Seek Shelter, which you also helped with, Gratton.
A little bit.
But so it was called the Amateur Video Contest, but there was no contest. They just showed him and were like, we're done. It's over. Good job,
Mm.
guys. So let's just say that I was really livid last year when they didn't announce any winners, and that was it. So I lost 2 years, and 1 year I won, but everybody won, I guess. I don't really know how you classify that.
So there's a lot riding on this year, is what I'm hearing. Is that it's
Yeah,
been a long time in the making. You're gunning for first place here. This is sort of the culmination of everything you've learned on all your past projects. As far as the G-Fest short go, it's pretty ambitious. And obviously, you've enlisted a lot of help. You've spent a lot of time working on it. And, last year was a little bit weird. There were some hiccups. One, it wasn't a contest. I know there was some struggles that you had getting there. I think you had 2 engagements at the same time, or like something overlapped the screening. And then, of course, the audio thing that you had a problem with. They had some older speakers that weren't great, and you had done a stereo mix that didn't sound right, played on a bad sound system. So you're trying to remedy all of that this year. We're hoping for a good showing, and we're hoping to bring home G-Fest gold.
Yeah, no. So each year, I can't really say this for the first 2, but in a way, I've been trying to work on my filmmaking skills, my storytelling skills, all the technical aspects, the creative aspects. And I've been trying to really hone in on my style, something that I really wanted to showcase this time around. And, I started off with Godzilla fan films, whatever, right? That's how it goes. But as time went on, specifically through COVID, I was like, wait a minute. I need to actually produce original content. I want to actually tell a story. I want to create something. I don't want to just do the same thing everybody else is doing. No offense to anybody else there. There's plenty of Godzilla fan films there, and a lot of them have some pretty cool technical aspects, whether it's really good stop motion or it's great cinematography or interesting concepts with the characters involved. There's a lot of things that a lot of people do, and it's very creative. But what I wanted to do specifically was I wanted to make something that could exist outside of the Godzilla fandom. I wanted something. One of my actually probably the biggest influence for me in that was, so Arrow Video has put out 2 box sets. I'm going to reference 2 here. One of them is the Solid Metal Nightmares, the films of Shinya Tsukamoto box set, which includes about 7 of Shinya Tsukamoto, who's a Japanese director, low budget. He's kind of a big like cult film director. For fans of maybe this show, they might know Tetsuo the Iron Man. Before that, he did a movie called The Adventures of Denshu Kozo. It's 45 minutes. It's a low budget short film, about 45 minutes. That's kind of the precursor to Tetsuo. And I thought that was really interesting. And I loved it. It was original. It was the basis for his style, right? It was you could tell that that's where you can see from that he went to Tetsuo, and it kind of, it snowballs into who he is now. And then another one is the Tremors box set that so kindly included a new restoration of, I want to say it was S.S. Wilson, the co-director of the film, S.S. Wilson's short film Live Recording, which is a really cool stop motion short film about this killer like film that like turns into like this blob that eats this guy. It's only like 12 minutes long. It's kind of quirky, but it's I love it. I love that thing. And so after I think watching both of those, it kind of came to me that it was like, okay, I need to like produce something that's undoubtedly me. I want to create my visual style. I want to really start working on my skills. I don't want to just do a Godzilla fan film. That's where last year came in. I did SOS Seek Shelter, which is a first person POV kinda. It's all kind of following this one character as he experiences a monster attack. You never see the monster, you just see his reactions. And that was because I didn't have a lot of money. I basically my budget was spent on lighting and fog, like fog liquid, and that was about it. And so like I shot that, I did that. I really liked how it came out, but it wasn't a lot because you only have a 6-minute time limit for the video contest. So you can't really do a lot. And I liked it, but I was like, I want to go further. I want to do something bigger. I want to make it feel bigger. And there's a couple technical aspects. I really focused on sound mixing last time, but as you mentioned, I ended up failing miserably because my stereo mix that I had created for this ended up not going through the speakers very well. Half the right side was out, so it was all left side stuff, and they were old, so it just didn't sound good. It sounded awful. I was like, there's a missing sound effect here. Like, we're sitting in almost silence. There's nothing here. And so this year it was like, okay, I can't make that mistake. I want to make it bigger. I want it to be really my style. And so that's kind of the early thoughts of what would become Edo Kami no Gyakushu.
So that was one of the things that that really drew me to you as a person. We had interacted several times over the years, but what I could relate to with you compared to some of our other mutual friends that we've known for years in the podcast area is that you're a filmmaker. My podcast, Giant Monster BS, Matt and I are both filmmakers. We both love films, and I'd say that we're filmmakers first, Godzilla fans second. And so that drew me to you is because I could see you're also into film, you're also into filmmaking, and you've got an intense creative desire that not a whole lot of other Godzilla podcasters have. And for me, that makes movie analysis more interesting. And so we've been talking a lot more this year to each other, and collaborating somewhat more than we used to. You've had me do music for several of your projects before. This was probably the most ambitious musical endeavor that I've done, at least recently. Is I actually, last time it was a song that I did for you. Usually it's one song at a time. This was an entire score. It was 4 or 5 kind of songs throughout the movie. And because I was so involved in scoring, I saw a script early on. I saw your footage basically as you were editing it. I saw it before, after color grading. I listened to a few rough, sound mixes that you were doing throughout post-production. And of course, I got to hear updates from you. You were sending me pictures of all the props and stuff. So it was really cool to see basically the entire film as it was happening, but the part that I have the least experience with or the least knowledge of is the pre-production part. So, I should also mention last year you did another one of these with our mutual friend Michael, and you were promoting your last short film that had just premiered at G Fest. This time's a little different. This is a preemptive stream happening before G Fest. So, let me ask you, I should have planned this out ahead of time, but um would you want to show the clip that we have? Would you want to show that before the Q&A or after, or should we do a couple questions and then roll it out?
Let's keep everybody on edge. Let's do it at the end.
Okay, I like that. So, if you're ready, unless there's anything else you want to say, I've got a good starter question, I think.
Let's jump into it.
Okay. So, what exactly is you've titled it in Japanese. So, I've heard Edo Kami, I've seen the kanji title that you've done. I've also heard Well God's Counterattack. So what exactly is the title and where did it come from?
Yeah, so the actual title from the film and the way that it was titled in the script and basically from the get-go has always been Edo Kami no Gyakushu, which is a Japanese title. When you translate that, it's Well God's Counterattack. Edo meaning well, Kami being God, no being possessive, and then Gyakushu being counterattack. So it's funny. Whenever I came up with this idea, I was trying to come up with a title. I like to come up with titles early on because I feel like that helps me figure out exactly what I'm going for. And I was really struggling. I was like, I don't know what to call this thing. I was like, I don't know, because like for SOS Seek Shelter, I came up with the title SOS, probably because one of my favorite titles to say, like the Japanese title, is Gojira Musura Mecha Gojira Tokyo SOS. Because I've heard that trailer so many times.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with SOS and I was like, okay, so save our souls is what that means, right? That doesn't work here because it's one individual. I was like, how do you work with that? So eventually I was like, seek only shelter, because the whole idea is like this monster is like a tornado almost. Like you go into this character goes into the basement to seek shelter. So what's our character doing? Seeking only shelter. So that's where that title came from. And that's kind of my creative process, is getting that title early on. So for this one, I had just, on our podcast, I had just covered King Kong no Gyakushu, which is King Kong's counterattack, or as we know it in the States, King Kong Escapes. So the no Gyakushu was on my mind already. That was just something that was on my mind. And then I've also been diving a little bit more into yokai, into Japanese in general. So like Kami was something I was familiar with at the time. And I have this well near my house. And I was like, what if I use this well for something? And that's probably because Ring is a movie that's been on my mind recently too. I actually, for Halloween this past year, I did a little special where I recreated the Sadako video. Because Ring is a very... It's a joke on our show. Rex loves Ring so much that like we bring up Ring all the time. And so the well is just something that was on my mind probably. And I remember at work, I was like, well, so I have this well. What if there's a monster in the well? And what if it's like coming alive after thousands of years or something. And I was like, well, God's counterattack. But that sounds stupid. So then I was like, let me translate that. Let me see what it sounds like in Japanese. And that's where I got Edo Kami no Gyakushu. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to use the actual English version. I'm gonna use the Japanese title and move on. So that's the weird way that came about.
So with the naming convention of giving it a Japanese title that doesn't really, you're not using the direct English translation, have you thought about giving it its own English name, sort of like King Kong Escapes? Have you thought about Well God Escapes?
I haven't, but I probably maybe one day I will. But I don't know. I kind of like the thought. I The film is very much deeply rooted in Japanese influence. Um, that's probably because for the last like 3 years of my life, almost all I watched is Japanese cinema.
Mm.
So I think it's starting to like bleed into just my creative process is just like the Japanese style. And so I might leave it as Edo Kami no Gyakushu and just force people to to speak Japanese to get the title.
Sounds good. So next thing I wanted to talk, well, I guess we can address this. Uh, Daniel Demana of the GNP says he is here for the Alec Baldwin interview. This is a reference to a recent video that my friend Matt and I made, in which Elijah featured in voice only as the director. Unfortunately, Alec Baldwin couldn't make it today, but I think if he was here, I think he would say he did not pull that trigger. Moving forward, Elijah, this movie compared to your last short film has a lot more dialogue, or word count might equal out. I don't know. Michael has a kind of long speech in the other one, but there, in terms of like actual dialogue, characters conversing, there's a lot more. And I know that that would make the script look very different in comparison to your last film. And in addition, there's a bigger cast. So during the writing process, how did that look for you? You know, where did you start? How did you come up with, I'm going to need this many characters? And overall, what was it like writing the dialogue, and how long did that take?
So when I write a script, I like to picture like who's gonna play this character in my head. Um, and so I just kind of pull from a pool of my friends. I'm like, okay, so I'm writing this story, and this is how it goes. So who would fit this, and then how would they act, and then I kind of build it off of there. So I started with my main character, who in the script is Matt. That's the name of the main character. I don't think you actually end up getting any of the characters' names said on in the film. But I started with that and I kind of built off of that of like, okay, so he's gonna have his best friend. Who am I gonna cast for that? How would they interact? How's this actor's personality? How would they work with the main character? And from there I kind of built off of that. And I wrote these characters with the exact actors in mind, hoping they would say yes. And they all actually thankfully said yes. It took a little bribing, little contract finagling, but I got all my actors to sign on board. And so I just kind of when I write a character, I like to figure out what I can get the actor to do. I like to know the range of my actor and kind of build it off of that. Kind of build with their strong, like what they're good at. So I probably started writing the script in, I want to say it was April. No, it's a little blurry now. It might have been early. It might have been late February. I think it was late February into April. And so once I kind of had my cast in mind, now I didn't have a cast decided until after the script was written because I needed them to see what they were going to do. So once I started the creative process on writing the script, I came up with my characters based off of who I knew and who I thought I could get to be involved. And so I say I kind of built off of that, started with the characters, and I just kind of when I write my stories, I have an idea of where I want it to end, but I let my brain just kind of creatively explain the plot as I go. Like, okay, so they're doing this, which would naturally transition to this, which would naturally transition to this. I don't like spending a ton of time figuring out what I want them to do. I just like letting it flow naturally because I think that's a better way to get the story out and it not feel clunky. And so once I came up with my story, which is not the story eventually you would see, I had the idea, I had the story, I had the script, and then I transitioned into okay, so I have my story. What can I do? Like, okay, now I have my story. How can I financially make this happen? What do I have to do to make it work? And so from there, I did a couple rewrites. I altered a couple things that didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like once I read through it, and I was like, okay, this doesn't work here. This doesn't make sense here. I don't like this. And so I cut a lot of the middle stuff and I replaced it with things that would make it flow a little bit better, flow a little bit quicker, and really get to the point and not linger on something too long or make it so you question, well, why does this happen? Because you only have 6 minutes, you have to tell a story in 6 minutes, which is very difficult. Not only that, you also have to get your audience engaged within 30 seconds. If you do not have them engaged within 30 seconds, you have lost. It's kind of the Martin Scorsese's like 3-minute rule. I think he's the one that said that, where in a feature length film, you have 3 minutes to get your audience engaged. If you do not get them in that 3 minutes, you will not have them for the duration of your film. And in the case of a short film, you pretty much have 30 seconds or your SOL. So from there, I kind of finagled and altered the story a little bit, and I found my way to what would eventually be the final script. And then from there, I'm open to doing improv on set. So from there, we had the script. That's what I pitched to my actors. That's what we built and based everything off of. But once we got on location, I let my actors just kind of naturally do stuff to see, because the characters are written after them, right? So let them be them. Let them act it out the way they would, because that's how the character's been written. And so they were like, I would say this here. I would react this way. We would say this at the same time. And like these actors, I let them be around each other enough that they had that chemistry where they can kind of bounce stuff off of each other. And they would come up with stuff kind of on the fly. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's the chemistry I'm looking for. This is a group of friends. They need to have chemistry. And so from there, like we shot it and we got the kind of the tone and everything figured out. And once we went into ADR, I tweaked a little bit. I was like, I don't like how you say this, so we're gonna make you actually say this instead. And I just kind of worked from there to make it the perfect blend of what I wanted in my original script, what my actors gave, and what sounded good to me.
Good answer. Good answer. So to sort of return to the progression that you've had from your last short film. Um, you mentioned audio was sort of the emphasis that you put on the previous short film, and then you sort of talked about how that is going to influence the way that this new film sounds. Um, would you say that has been your biggest lesson from your previous film, or what other lessons have kind of informed uh, this film? If you made this last year, I imagine it'd be different because of your new experiences.
Yeah, I think the sound is a big one. I did the exact same thing in terms of how I got my sound. Both times I kind of built it from the ground up, like completely redesigned it based off of what I would think it would sound like, not necessarily what the microphone actually got. So I shot it with the intention of going Italian style and like removing all the audio and just doing it all in post, which I'm sure is unnecessary, uh, like work. At the end of the day, I could just buy a boom mic and hire somebody to stand there and hold a mic for 3 hours, but I decided against that and just doing it with the whole sound design, sound mixing kind of from the ground up. And the thing I learned from last year was how much power you have with adjusting levels and designing what you want to hear. There's a couple little tricks you can use to like get background noise and it not be too obnoxious. Um, and so that was something that I learned was kind of how to do an even better sound mixing. I know you and I talked a little bit on the final hours about like how to sound mix this properly,
Mhm.
which ended up being a whole nother process that kept me up most of the night that like last night. Um but more so than that, I think the thing I'm most proud of is not only did I color correct, which I color corrected the last one, but this time around I went and I color graded it. I actually like went in, did another layer, color graded it, made it look the way I wanted it to look. That's something I didn't do on my last one. I just color corrected and moved on. I have actually thought about going back and doing like a color graded version, see what kind of colors I could get out of it just to see like, is this better? Does this look worse? What could I do differently here? Just because I think the last one looked a little too dull. And I like the idea of kind of the more colorful, artistically inclined color grading that this one has.
Um, so yeah, you brought up color grading. That definitely uh that audio mixing that I was sort of advising on at the last minute. Um, that sort of transitions into time constraints. So this, especially, doing the score, it was a very last minute thing. Although we had talked about it well in advance. But I know you had some setbacks. But talk a little bit about what it's like working with time constraints and how long it exactly took from start to finish to get through this, because it seemed pretty quick.
Yeah, so the short film, so I started pre-production, probably in late February. Now, bear in mind, from late February up until June 1st, I had a vacation to prep for and go on. I had 2 Blu-rays to work on. I had 3 live streams, about a dozen podcasts. Actually, it might have been 2, 3 more live streams. At least one new kaiju movie that I had to see a couple times to review on the show. I had some articles to write, and I had work, which I typically work about 45 to 50 hours a week. So for me, I don't have a lot of time. Anybody who knows me knows that like my time is like Wednesdays, and that's about it. That's usually my free day. And so that alone constricted so much time because I had to go shopping, I had to print out scripts, I had to write the script, I had to finalize it, I had to cast every actor, I had to call, do some conversations on the phone like about the score, about the monster itself, about all this different stuff. And then you have to include, okay, so I had a production assistant, so I got to work with his schedule, his work, his schooling, his free time. I have 4 actors. I have 2 voice actors. Like, there's a lot of things that go into that. So it was really difficult to find time where my actors were off and they weren't doing anything. And so we were kind of constricted to like 6 hours on one day to film. It wasn't even 6 hours. It was like 2 hours, and then we had a 4-hour break, and then another hour, and then we would be done. And then, I mean, on top of that, there was some weather problems. Rain had gotten into the way of things, so we had to delay filming by a week. So I finished the script and had my actors by late August or late April. Late April, I had my crew set. I had the filming location scouted. I had the script done. I was ready. The day of filming, it was thunderstorming. We had to cancel, which ended up working out pretty well for me. But that delayed us by a week. And then the first day of filming, it was a disaster. It just did not work out. And so then we had to crunch it into like 2 other days to do the filming. Bear in mind, we're now 3 weeks into May. By the 4th week, I have to have it in the bag. So I think in the on that 3rd week, we shot over 2 days. And then the following week, I did like 3 days of ADR sessions with the actors. And then, like, during all of this, like, after each day, I would set and I would edit and I would figure out what clips would work. And I would, like, figure out what I would have to do to get sound. And I'd make a list of the sounds I needed. And I would work on color grading and color correction. And so it was basically for me, like, as soon as we were done filming, pack up, like take down everything, go get cleaned up, do what I got to do, start editing. Next day, set everything up, film, take it all down, go to editing. And it ended up being one of those things where the sound mixing got me all like I had to do the sound mixing all the way up till the last day before it had to be sent in. And even more so than that, there was a couple setbacks with the monster suit because I went and I did traditional tokusatsu effects for this one. We had a shipping delay through the post office. The post office is hot dog water with its shipping. And so we had to delay that filming by like 3 days, which meant that I was filming the day before I went on my vacation. Bear in mind, the second day of vacation, I had to have it 100% done and submitted. So I was filming 3 days before it had to be done. So, and that stuff was easily the hardest. We had a whole problem the first night of filming. We forgot the fog machines, so there was no fog in the filming. And then the footage did not end up being saved. So all my work there had not even it was gone. We had issues with the suit. We had issues. It just it it was kind of disastrous. First time doing like miniatures and men in suits, it was like, oh god, there's no way this is gonna work out. But the second night we came in, we showed up, we showed out, we kicked butt. We had learned enough from the day prior. A lot of this was kind of fly by night, just kind of learn as you go. And for me, I love that because it forces you to think, it forces you to problem solve, and that's something a lot of filmmakers, just like amateur filmmakers, don't understand. Is as a director, your whole job is problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
If a light goes out, how are you going to make this shot work? If a microphone doesn't work, okay, what can you do instead? If you don't have the budget for the set you want, how are you going to adjust that? At on those final hours, it was okay. I'm one person in a suit. Like I've got my cameraman and assistant director who's the same person. So like I had him act as the monster first. I would have him do it. I would film it so he would see what I wanted. And then we did another take with me without the suit on in my like almost onesie because I played the monster in this. I acted it out and he recorded it and filmed it. And then I gave him notes on, okay, so this is what I want here. This is what I need here. This is how we're going to make this work. And then we shot in the monster suit because the night prior, it was kind of hit or miss if he knew what he was 100% doing in that shot because we hadn't really talked it out. So it was a lot of learning for that stuff. And it ended up working out very well because we both got to kind of learn how to do stuff kind of on the fly. And I think it actually helped us a lot getting to know how to film with this style of effects, because the hardest part is the forced perspective. As kind of a look in, it's in the woods. This monster's in the woods, so you have to have these miniature trees really close to the camera, and the monster's got to be far enough away that it looks big, but it doesn't look wrong. It doesn't look different, right? So forced perspective was something that we had to work on. Thankfully, I have a background in toy photography, so I've already done that kind of forced perspective stuff. So I have an idea of how to set that up, and so I utilized that knowledge I previously had into how to frame everything, how to stage it properly, and then I directed my assistant director and cameraman what to do specifically for these shots and when to zoom in, when to zoom out, where the camera needed to be. We put marks on the ground so he knew where the dolly needed to go. And so a lot of it was kind of troubleshooting last minute, but it helps you learn. And that's something I think a lot of filmmakers could use, amateur filmmakers, is learning how to problem solve and learning little alternatives, little cheats to get the shots you need or want. Did that answer your question? That was very long.
Yeah, it did. From the end of February to late May.
Yeah.
But no, I completely agree about the problem solving thing. I jokingly say filmmaking is actually just tightening and loosening a bunch of screws. because that's tripods, that's light stands, that's boom poles, that's C-stands, that's everything that you need is just like break it down, tighten it. But problem solving, as just sort of a larger uh, umbrella term for all of that, it's so rewarding when you work on a movie. Even before production, you're problem solving. You're writing and you're saying, how can I afford this? What can I cut to make this look like it costs more than I spent? Uh, it's all problem solving, and for me, that's one of the most rewarding aspects is, at the end of the day, you have a product and you can say, "Actually, I did it this way," because, it looks a certain way and you can be proud of it. So another advancement that you made with this short film is that you were actually filming on a cinema camera this
I
time
am.
for the first time, which I think is a huge leap forward, technically for your filmmaking. So real quick, if you could, what was that like? What were the challenges? How were you expecting it to be versus what it was like?
So honestly, I went to school for multimedia. And that was a great entry level for how to do Premiere Pro, how to utilize Adobe products in general. We worked with Photoshop, we worked with Lightroom, we worked with Illustrator, After Effects, and Premiere Pro. But we also used Canon. I don't remember what camera. It's like a 10-year-old camera at this point. But
Like
we
a
used
C100 or something,
something like that.
maybe
It wasn't a cinema camera. It was a typical,
DSLR.
yeah. But that was a great way to get an idea of what I needed, right? And then, you were on the phone with me the minute that I bought this camera.
I
Uh,
advised you. I basically made your shopping list for you.
yeah, yeah. And so, like, we were on the phone, and I kept asking you questions because, like, just I was just kind of guessing off of my prior knowledge with that Canon camera. And then you were filling me in on kind of the ins and outs, and you were there for legitimately the moment I hit buy it now,
Mhm.
which is a magical moment in my life, almost as good as whenever I bought the laptop that I'm using, or actually better than the laptop that I bought, because that was my first. This is in fact my first official camera. I've always wanted a camera. I've asked for a camera. I've tried so hard to get a camera.
Mhm.
Nobody's ever bought me a camera. Um, so this in fact is my first camera. And for the most part, I had done a couple test shots like days prior to actually filming to kind of get a better grasp at it. And you and I talked a little bit on what to do when the camera got in, and once I had my lens and everything, I could finally work with it. So for the most part, once filming started, it was kind of easy for me to kind of fall in line with what I needed to do with the camera. Honestly, the hardest things to do was mostly finding a way to get the camera in the angle I wanted with my shoulder mount without being able to see what my camera's actually seeing.
Mhm.
And that's something I've dabbled in the idea of kind of just seeing what the camera lens is seeing in my head and kind of hoping that it works out. I'm about 75-25%, I for the most part I'm pretty close on what I'm actually getting, but I'm still working on it a little bit. Um but nonetheless, that was something that I had to do a couple times. Um There's a couple of the interior shots that I just kind of propped the camera up. I did the settings prior, and I tried to get as low as possible, but I just could not get there.
Mhm.
So probably the hardest was just kind of guessing in those instances and hoping it would work. That's why on my next production I'm absolutely buying a uh
An
a,
external monitor.
an external monitor. You and I have talked about that. Like I'm dead set. Like after G Fest, I'm gonna buy that. That's one of the things I'm gonna buy when I get back. is I need an external monitor because that would help me so much. So
Yeah, that's one of those things that comes with experience is like you don't know how much you're going to need something until the occasion arises, and it's like, why don't I have this? Um, I'm going through the same thing. I just bought another cinema camera. I bought a Sigma FP, so I'm going through all the same stuff. It's like, all this stuff gets in, and then it's like, wait, this doesn't have the output that I thought it did. Now I have to buy a different cable, or I thought this plate could screw on this way. It doesn't. I have to buy another one. But it's a challenge, but obviously it yields great results, and there's so much room to grow. So tell me a little bit about, this is a G Fest short. Um, you're putting it in G Fest because or back out wider, you're at G Fest because you're a giant monster fan, kaiju
mm,
fan, Godzilla fan. You're a fan of this genre. Obviously, you have been for a long time. We both are. We both have had podcasts for years. So when you're making this, and I'll ask like a little follow-up question, depending on what we cover with your answer, but how was it approaching a movie like this? You're making a giant monster movie, because it's going to be shown in G Fest. What about being a giant monster fan influenced this film versus just being a fan of film in general or Japanese film?
that's a good question. So honestly, I have watched so every giant monster movie from Japan that's available with English subtitles officially in the West, I have probably seen almost. Like the amount of films I haven't seen is probably less than 20. So I have seen from the bottom of the barrel, I've seen God Raiga versus King Oga or Demi King the Sea Monster to Godzilla -1, Gamera Revenge of Iris, and Godzilla 54. Like I've seen everything in between. So because of that, I kind of know what I want. I kind of know what's already been done. I kind of know what I want to do. And honestly, I would say that for this short film, I tried to approach it with more of a yokai approach than a kaiju approach because I think something that is very important to Japanese monsters is their base in Japanese folklore. Even if you look at the original designs for Godzilla, it's very inspired by onis, right? Japanese mythological characters that can be considered yokai. It's a very interesting world to dive into. I've had many conversations with people about how, like, if you look at how Godzilla is in that original film, you can kind of draw a line between Godzilla and, like, Kayako from Ju-on the Grudge. There's this creature that no matter what, you're cursed to die to. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, you will die to it eventually. And that's kind of the fear of radiation, right? And so it translates and mirrors beautifully. And so I kind of wanted to do something similar to that where you have this monster that almost feels more godlike and more supernatural than an actual monster, something that you would see in your traditional Western films. So the whole idea of it being called Edo Kami, well god, is it's a god. It's this ancient creature from, a bygone era that is not natural in a way. We don't explore the origins of the Edo Kami in the short, but I absolutely hope that people think, "Oh, why does it look this way? Where did it come from? What is it doing? Like, what's its next thing to do after this short film? Where does it go from here?" Because another thing in Japanese in Japanese storytelling, they don't answer all the questions. You are kind of left to like wonder and ponder like what will happen. Even in like the original Godzilla movie, they even say if humankind continues to, use nuclear weapons, one day another Godzilla will appear. That's kind of scary of like this isn't just an isolated incident. This can happen again. And so the thought of like this monster can show up again, I think is a beautiful concept. So I think in many regards, I have attempted to kind of showcase that, um, and kind of go back to that a little bit. But more so than that, I'm one of those people that believes in narrative first before the monster. Like your Gamma 3s, like your -1s, like your 54s. So the film is more of a human narrative than a monster like movie, which is going to be contrary to like 97% of all the other short films shown at this contest. Because I'm being honest here, this is not meant to be demeaning. Most of the other short films there are going to be stop motion animation shorts with two monsters brawling until 6 minutes hits.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ton of work that goes into that. Like that's not something they just whipped up on a weekend and called it good. That's something they spent a couple weeks on. Maybe they did some storyboarding. Maybe they went and they kind of drafted out some story concepts. What would be cool, all that kind of thing. But that to me is not the storytelling I want. If I ever got the chance to make a giant monster movie with an actual budget, I would want it to be I would want it to have a message. I would want it to engage with an audience on a personal level. Something like a -1. The fact that I watched -1 30 times and I watched it a 31st time with an English dub, even though I hated the English dub, I could still feel the emotion at certain moments in that film and tear up. Says a lot about that human narrative that I love. And I think that's how giant monster movies should be. And I think that's something that's rather difficult is how do you engage your audience with a narrative that can connect with them and not, pull back and kind of make the monster stuff feel just kind of there.
Mm-hmm. Were you going to say something else?
I think that's. Did I answer your question?
You did, but I have a sort of second part to that question, which I think you're sort of getting at anyway. This isn't just a short film. This wasn't just something that you decided to make. There is a specific reason you made it, and that was to feature it in this contest. You had a deadline and you were adhering to that. You had guidelines for time. There was something I talked with you about briefly where I was like, why don't you just make you could make a slightly extended cut, just as your short film. You could do whatever you want with audio. You don't have to be beholden to the limitations, but you were very steadfast in sticking to that. So this is a film made for that audience. And to what degree did that influence, knowing this is going to be shown to a room of Godzilla Gamera fans, influence the making of the movie?
Ooh, okay. This is gonna be a hot answer. I don't think this is an answer anybody's really gonna like. When I made this, I made it absolutely like it is a G-Fest short film. That is why I made it. That is where it's being premiered. But I also wanted to go farther. Like I do have hopes and kind of plans to showcase it outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that might not be available publicly because I 100% am down to put it into film festival circuits. I think approaching it in that thought process of like, hey, fans of this genre are going to go see it, like they're going to watch it. People who are judging this are probably fans of the genre. I don't think I really let that deter me or alter the way I made it. Something that I'm very adamant about in terms of my podcasting, in my writing, in my filmmaking is I do not want the opinion of an audience member to deter my art, my craft, my vision. I want to make something that they like. Um, and so I do not remotely plan on like doing it, like making it in a way that um sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. I don't go out of my way to adhere or to cater to an audience. I
Mhm.
want to make something that an audience member finds appealing. You know, as an example, going back to Shinya Tsukamoto, I don't think that I'm the target audience for Tetsuo the Iron Man at all. You know, I'm not Japanese. I've seen one David Lynch film in my life. Um, I did not grow up on Ultra Q. I did not grow up with black and white 4.3 aspect ratio films per se. I love that movie. That was not a movie made for me, but the artistry behind it is enough for me to like it and to appreciate it and to want to see it more and really cherish what I'm watching. As I've gotten older, I think one thing that I've developed is an appreciation for the artist. You know, I one of my biggest problems with the school I went to for multimedia is the way they taught you was your color correction must make it true to color. It
Mm.
has to be perfect. The white in your film must be pure white. Color grading is something to help make it perfect. It's you got to make it look commercial. You want, you want to make it appealing to a commercial audience. And in a way I kind of hated that. I did not like the idea of something that's bland. I like the idea of the artistic vision. I like thinking outside the box of what is a commercial, and I want to think more of what is artistically inclined. How can you put your artistic eye into this? And so I know one of the test audience reviews from somebody mentioned like the specific like the way I shot it. He was like, "Are you a fan of this? Like, why is it that this is the visual approach?" And when he asked me that, I was like, "Absolutely! Like, I that is what I love, and that's why I kept it the way I did." And that was something that he actually highlighted was your artistic vision is very clear here. Like you can see the foundations of what you like here. And it's a good jumping off point from the last production that wasn't entirely there for most of that production. So while I think the right answer would be I made the film to make fans like it, or like I made the film with the intention of the fans are going to appreciate what I put in here. I really and honestly didn't do that. I made something I thought I liked. I made something that I thought other people would appreciate, and people who understand the idea of art. That sounds a little mean. People who understand the artistic vision concept on a personal level would appreciate that in it. In a
Mm.
way, it's kind of like Francis Ford Coppola's Metropolis, but a little less,
Megalopolis.
or yeah, Megalopolis. Yeah, except it's not as um
Long.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if you wanted this to be public knowledge, but there's a, you know, to build off of that, there was a caveat. You know, you said you'd be interested in putting this short film into film festivals, but there's a criteria that it has to meet. I don't know if are you open to saying that publicly? What that caveat is?
I mean, I'll put it out here. So to be honest, while I'm very confident in this, I need to know that other people see. Like, I don't want to pull a Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. You know, I don't want to make something that when people go watch it, they're like, "Oh, this is a mess." You know,
Mm,
I want to know that it's something worth diving into on in terms of the audience. So I'm holding off on putting it anywhere else until I see how it does at G Fest. Because I want to know that people of this genre can appreciate it before I put it in places where we're not even talking about this genre. Does that make sense?
mhm.
So that's kind of the caveat, is to see how people who are knowledgeable of the genre take it before I put it somewhere where it's not in its natural habitat.
That makes sense. Let's see. I want to highlight this comment. Kaiju United says this short is great.
Thank you, Jacob. He might have seen the screener copy.
Um, Also, for those of you just joining us, at the end of the stream, we're shooting for an hour and 46 minutes. 1 minute longer than your previous stream for SOS Seek Shelter. But at the end of the stream, we are going to be showing an exclusive first look sneak peek at the film, and we'll be premiering it here, just the segment that you gave us specifically for this. So I just wanted to let everybody know that if there are people here watching and waiting with bated breath. So something I noticed when watching the film, because you know, you mentioned doing things you know, Italian style audio, overdubbing ADR. Now the score was not done Italian style because I saw the movie and the score was made after watching the movie. So I have had the pleasure of seeing it, and I've watched it several times over and over, trying to get the timing right of certain songs and things. Um, and the progression throughout the movie, you know, it's a short film. Obviously, it's 6 minutes. I wouldn't say it strictly adheres to a 3-act structure or anything. But there is a progression. You know, I wrote in my notes, I called it sort of a descent, where it starts out very very broad, and you know, you're in exteriors and you have all these people walking spread out over a large distance, and then as the movie goes closer, they narrow in, people get closer, the focus starts to get smaller. We go to interiors, and at the very end, I won't spoil it, but you know, it's a descent, and then at the end it sort of explodes, and it's very much, the movie is building to something. Um, how much did that structure, because it's also kind of the structure of your last short film too. Uh, More literally a descent, you know, descending further into the home. Um, so maybe that's part of your style that you're developing, or you know, that's the story you like to tell. But how much of that was on your mind? You know, how much of that was deliberate? You know, I want to do this.
Yeah, so I really appreciate, you know, to kind of as an example, you know, in the movie Ring. Yeah, I'm gonna bring up Ring, I think, a couple times here. It starts off kind of broad, you know. It's in, I want to say they start. It's kind of, it's in Tokyo. There's a lot of stuff in Tokyo and pretty close to the big city. But as that story goes on, eventually they end up in a well, like legitimate well, and it's a very claustrophobic. And there's a lot of claustrophobic sequences that are pretty, tight and short and claustrophobic. And I think space is something that I really like utilizing. When we were filming all the interior stuff, a lot of that stuff's actually pretty cramped. In general, I didn't have a lot of space to put the camera. So we were using every inch we possibly could to get this right. I'm a huge fan of wide angles. So I like filling my screen. I like getting it so the tip top part of this frame is important for this reason. And that's something that, especially as we went into the interior stuff, I wanted to build this frame for each shot that really gave a sense of you're in this place. You're entrapped. Like you're in this house right now. It's not on a set where, you've only got two walls in this house actually built and the camera's just on this crane like moving through the house as these people interact. I wanted it to feel like you're in this house. I mean, I love crane shots, don't get me wrong, but I think when you're telling a narrative that's supposed to be a little personalized, I think it's very important to make moments personal and give it this sense of like, okay, there's not a lot of space when you needed to. When my actors were out in the like outside, I wanted to make it feel like, okay, there's a whole world here. They are walking through the world and we are following them as they walk through the world. And that kind of helped when it came to the interior, kind of bringing it in a little bit, making it claustrophobic. That's something like in my last one, I really wanted to have that as like seek shelter, like you are in this basement, you cannot escape. And so I always tried to keep it fairly close to my actor outside of one specific moment where we took a look outside to the bigger world where, there's this monster coming. And so as you go back into this character's world, we're back in and it's claustrophobic, it's tight, like we're following this character as he's going through this circumstance. So I would definitely say that's something I consider is how open does it feel? Because I really want to help, the lighting and the framing is all great ways to help tell a story. And so I'm somebody who really tries to utilize the visual storytelling to hit home the narrative that I'm telling.
And we talked about it a little bit, but the amount of characters has increased, and I'd kind of call it an ensemble cast. Pretty much, there's no time when one character gets isolated from the rest, really. Everybody's sort of on screen around the same time, and they're all communicating. So, what was that like? Both in preparing for it and execution. Obviously you're directing more people, you're having to stage more people. And also there's an added dynamic of all of these characters know each other and have to interact. What was your approach to that?
Yeah, so I think honestly that it's not very difficult for me as somebody who hasn't done a ton of that, because a few years ago I went pretty hard and heavy into theater. And at one point we in the opening song for this show we did, which was a Little Shop of Horrors, actually, I want to say there was about a dozen No, there's probably about 16 people on screen at one point, or on stage at one point.
Mhm.
And so one of the things I would tell people is like, come up with a story. Why is your character here? Like, what is your narrative for being on Skid Row? Why are you here? Come up with a name. What's your character's name? It's irrelevant to the plot, but it's important for you as an actor to know what you're doing, to engage yourself in the greater world that there is. I love stories that you can tell it's a lived in world. I think a great example of that is Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim. That film makes you feel like this is a lived in world. That's something that people have lived in, grown up in, existed in. And so when I approach my directing, specifically with character directing, I want my actors to feel as that character. Like I said, when I wrote them with specific people in mind so that they could fall into that character a little bit easier. That makes me directing them on their character a little bit easier, but on top of that, I want them to think about it and have a background to their character. I think any actor, when you take on a role, you should come up with your own headcanon for why the character is the way it is. Let's say that you're playing a 20-year-old director who hosts a podcast, okay? So let's say he's a film nerd, okay? So he loves movies. That's why he's doing a film podcast. That's why he directs films. So he's going to take his love of film and he's going to showcase that in the podcast, but also use the podcast as research to help his filmmaking develop. And so from there, I have created a character that I could play. Granted, I just described myself, but that's what I would do. Why does this person have a podcast? Why does this person love film? Where did this come from? And where's it going? And so I really like it when actors, characters can you can blur the line of what is acting and what is the character, because I think that can give you a more rich, more authentic performance, not necessarily method acting, but just being able to live the character when you're performing the character. I think is something very important and very enriching for an audience member when watching these characters on screen.
And you have a little bit of experience acting, right? You had an acting coach at some point?
Yes, I have taken acting lessons myself. I did a couple of acting performances. I've won a couple of tournaments as an actor. So I have a little bit of understanding of an actor. And actually, one of the things that my acting coach taught me was that idea of like talking with your actor, explaining, using adjectives to describe like why are they feeling this way, why are they doing this, giving them more detail so that they can build off of it. Because at the end of the day, as a director, what you have in your head, you need to communicate with them. And as a director, your job for your actors is being the hands that mold the clay statue that your actors are performing as. So that's something that I always keep in mind whenever I go into these is I need to be the molder to help shape and create the image that I'm wanting for these actors to properly perform. And so with that, I think not only having that acting experience myself, but having that acting coach kind of give me these tips ended up helping me a lot with really being able to maybe communicate and help visualize these characters for the actors when I've directed them. At least I would hope so.
So you made this film basically by yourself. You were at the head of it. So what was it like budgeting? Because that's an element of independent and short filmmaking that I feel like people don't talk about a lot. So I want to know what your experience was going into it and coming out of it. How did you approach the budget?
So I probably should have been a little more responsible with the budgeting, but the way I approached it was pretty much whatever it takes. Of course, like I went to some thrift stores and whatnot to kind of buy the costumes and whatnot, and whatever I could do, like buying stuff and getting discounts, I would do that. But for me, it was honestly a lot of like, this is like, I gotta buy what I gotta buy for this. Some of it I approached like, okay, so I bought a tent so that my actors, when they're not acting, don't have to be in the hot sun as we're outside doing this stuff, doing this filming. I can then turn around and reuse this later for another production. I don't have to buy another one. So some of it's like, okay, I'm buying this and it's an investment for my future productions. So I don't have to like worry about giving my actors more next time, right? But in terms of the stuff that was like a one-time use, like the suit, it was just kind of like, I got to do it. I've got to put the money I got to put into this. I ended up going over budget a little bit more than I planned. But then by the time it was over, the budget ended up being less than I was worried it would be. And so it's kind of like in that middle of like, I'm happy with the budget and I spent too much. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm. Um, do you feel comfortable disclosing any of those numbers?
I don't have the exact number. I still have two. I have the suit that I need the numbers for, and there's one other thing I haven't paid for yet that I need to look into. But as of right now, I think it's sitting at roughly, I want to say it's about 1,600.
Cha-ching.
Yeah, so the price of a very cheap car.
Mhm. So you brought up the suit, and that was something, I kinda wanna talk a little bit about. You commissioned some props and, if you wanna call the suit a prop or a costume. Um, Obviously, that's a kind of big, advancement compared to last year's short, that you actually have a monster on screen and it's a suit. How important was that, from the inception of the short film? How important was, like, I need to have a monster on screen?
That was one of the big requirements. I knew from the get-go I wanted a actual monster. I wanted it to be men in suit. I wanted it to be traditional tokusatsu effects. That was one of the things that was like a absolute must-have for me. So right off the bat, I already knew I was going to sink half a K into at least the suit, at least half a K. Um, and so from there, I was like, okay, who do I know that actually could do this? And it just so happens that Daniel Demana of the Godzilla Novelization Project, is somebody who has went to school for, I believe it was practical arts. So that's like your sculpting, your clay making. So he has kind of a background in that stuff. And I know he's worked on a couple suits here and there. So I was like, I know who I'm going to call. And so I called him and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. And so we had a couple of meetings, couple discussions about what we wanted and what I wanted and what I was looking for. And we ended up with a pretty good idea, and we went from there and ended up working out pretty well.
Very cool. You also commissioned a couple props for the movie. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about those. The
Yeah,
statues.
yeah. There's some statues that show up in this that we will see in the clip. And I have brought something for. I don't know. Do you want me to show it off now, or do you want to wait till we show the clip?
Let's do it after the clip, I think.
Okay.
Give it some
So
context.
there was a prop that I commissioned by Danny, which was one of the plot, which is kind of the plot MacGuffin of the short that kind of gets the ball rolling. And so that was kind of one of those influences through Japanese media that I was like, okay, so this is what I'm going to use to help bring out the characters and to propel the narrative a little bit. The influence will be obvious for anybody who has seen certain films.
Mhm.
They will probably be able to link it up pretty easily.
I think I know what
And
you're talking about.
and so yeah, and that's something I think people, fans of the genre and fans of Japanese cinema, will be able to see those influences. But it's not, oh hey, look, here's the oxygen destroyer about to kill Godzilla and Ghidorah in the ocean. Hey,
Exactly,
look,
yeah.
it's the Mazer. The Mazer's on this screen. Hey, we're gonna call this monster Monster Zero.
I'm honestly very proud that you resisted the urge to include a shelf full of Ultramans and Godzillas in the background of one of the shots. I feel like most people doing a film like that for G Fest would not be able to resist the urge of like, let me squeeze my collection into one of these shots and let people know I'm a real fan. But it doesn't the influences are much more organic. And especially, the statues are a little similar to one of the Dai Yokai movies. Um in my mind, I don't know if that's exactly what you were referencing, but that's just what sort of I associated it with in my mind, which is not directly, I'd say most Godzilla fans have probably not seen those. Um, but it's all organic, I think. And speaking of influences, did you want to talk a little bit about the music that you had commissioned me to make? You're frozen for me. I don't know if let's see what I can do here. Elijah, are you here? We lost him. Okay, everybody, sit tight. We're gonna try to get Elijah back. Um, what I might go ahead and do, to buy us some time, is I might see about showing this clip that we had from the Edo Kami movie. Hopefully, I'm still alive for everybody. Bear with me here. So
looks like this statue was a warning for people not to go near the well. This image. It's a monster underneath the well.
Okay. So, while you were gone, I just playing the clip. Maybe in a few minutes, if you want to, we could start it over again. It's short enough if you want to do that. So, where were we? Where did we leave off?
So we were sorry about that. There's a storm going on and it took out the power,
Oh,
which was
jeez.
not in my bingo card for today. Well, we were talking about give me a second here. We were talking about
think we were talking about maybe the statues. Does that
yes,
sound
yes, we
right?
were. Yes. We were talking about the statues and Danny working on them. You mentioned the yokai films, which is definitely something that I took influence from. Maybe a little bit of GMK in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of influence from some Japanese films in there.
For those of you listening at home after the fact, we just played a clip. Everybody got to watch it, and in the clip of Edo Kami, one of the statues we were talking about gets sort of knocked off of a countertop and breaks, and there's I don't know how you describe it, a scroll or some kind of
Yeah.
seal or whatever they're called in the yokai movies. So do you still have your prop on you?
I do.
You want to show
So
that off?
what I have here, I hope the lighting's not too bad here. I have this is the broken head of the statue that we saw fall. I had two statues made. I had the hero prop, which I have at my house, that didn't get broken, and then I had one made specifically to fall to break on impact. So the way it was designed was to actually have the head fall off as its own piece, which ended up working out pretty well here. Um, Here you can see the beautiful mold work by Danny. It turned out very great, at least in my opinion. And the way it broke, it kind of rolled off screen as you all saw in that clip. And so this is the piece of the statue that I kept. I actually let my actors take home a piece of the breakable statue, and then Danny's getting the remaining pieces. So this is my little trinkets from the actual production that I decided to keep. So I have a little head that sits on my TV stand now for all eternity.
It's very cool. It's personally one of my favorite shots in the whole film is the it's sort of the money shot, that and some
Yeah.
of the monster stuff. But that, you get one of the props and, it breaks perfectly in front of the camera. So let's see. Try to remember what my next question is here. So we are coming up on the end of the stream here. We've got probably a little over 10 minutes left. What do you think was your proudest achievement with making this movie?
This is going to be the cop out answer. So as I've already said, I ended up being the suit actor.
I was the one that played in the film as the monster. And that was such a huge undertaking. So, for some context, we shot this in May. Where I live, May is like summer. So it was like 80 some odd degrees, midday in a garage, no air conditioning, no fans because we have the fog. We can't let the fog just, get blown away. It has to be able to simmer there and kind of, just float. So we shot this. It took about an hour and a half to film all the monster stuff. Unfortunately, about 90% of the monster stuff actually got cut from the final film. And so that, all of that, we shot it at a higher frame rate so it could be slowed down. The forced perspective, the fact that there's an actual monster suit here. And it got really hot in the costume. It was extraordinarily hot. The first time we shot it at night, it was fine, but that second day, it was awful. I had somebody specifically on standby just to call an ambulance if need be. I was not going to take a chance on having a heat stroke in this costume and have no ambulance on the ready. So I had somebody there strictly like with a phone ready to call in case of something like that. But we ended up not needing it, thankfully. And that was probably one of the scariest things, honestly, was just that whole, time filming. And so looking back at it, honestly, some of my proudest moments probably was just the fact that we did that whole thing. I trucked through it. I didn't stop. At some points it was like, I need to get out of this. Like, I need to stop. But I was like, nope, I'm going to keep moving. We're going to get this done. I am 110% not giving up here. And so for me, I think the whole monster, all the footage we shot for that is the thesis of filmmaking in ways, like not giving up, not stopping, like don't stop till it's over. And so for me, that was the most enduring part, and that might go down as probably my favorite memory. And it just gave me, like, I can't look at Suitmation now with the same thought and understanding going forward. I just can't. That's impossible for me to even fathom.
Yeah, the monster stuff, no pun intended, looms large over the movie. It's what the whole film sort of builds to. It was also one of the last things that you shot, so it was kind of looming over the production too. From the outset, you knew that there was going to be a monster involved, and you wanted to do it practically. And then finally, by the time it happened, it was one of the most difficult things. It sounds like. One of your stories that hit close to home with me was the first day. I guess you could call it maybe an accidental rehearsal, where you you intended to come home with some footage and you left empty-handed after a full day of suit acting.
Yeah. The first day we shot it, it was like an hour and a half. Like, we had spent a few hours like setting up the whole thing. We had the forest, the woods made that day by our miniature director. And then we got the suit. We did a couple tests. Like, I tested it out at my house, and then we took it. We had everything set up. We started filming, and I was in that suit for about an hour and a half, and it was dreadful. But I was just kind of like, we were just kind of doing it. Like, we ran and bought everything last minute. I went and bought some ice water that we ended up just throwing out because the ice was going to be melted no matter what. Um, we forgot the fog liquid. Like, we had the machine, we had all that. We just didn't have the liquid. Um, so there was a lot of speed bumps that first day in terms of doing the monster stuff, and it was a disaster. And in a way, I kind of view it as like a surprise blessing, because at the end of the day, we had to redo it all because the filming, the recording did not go through. And so, yeah, that day turned out to be a rehearsal day.
Mhm.
And so we made plans to go back the following day. Everything was set already, so we just had to get moving. So we got there early. We did our first rehearsal with me, or with my cameraman doing his acting on it, and then I did it, and then we just went ham and just started filming. And then we took it all down and called it a wrap. And it was probably it was absolutely the hardest thing in the entire production. It was the thing I had the least amount of experience on. And we said that night, because I was not happy. Like, we filmed the day before I left on my vacation.
Mhm.
Like, it was down to the wire. If we didn't get it that day, it was not going to be done, and the short film would have not been completed. And so we we went in, and we were like, you know what, this was a secret gift. Like, at the end of the day, this was a gift. This was a day to let us fix our mistakes, come prepared, have the stuff we need, and just do it. And we did it, and it turned out really good. And honestly, it saved us, because having that fog just added a level of detail to the shots that otherwise would have just been left out. So it ended up being a very, very happy accident that I was thrilled that ended up happening.
Um, speaking of the end of the film, that's when we get the theme, the literal music theme of the movie. Um, and that was the first piece of music that I had made for the film. Talk a little bit about the music, and at what point did you decide that this was going to be basically a fully scored film?
Yeah, so the last film, SOS Seek Shelter, I only had one song. It was very Cloverfield-esque, with just one song in the entire film, and the rest being natural sounds. Um, this time around, I wanted it to feel more like a legitimate production, a legitimate film. Like, somebody went out with professional grade material and spent money on this. And I was like, I need a score. Like, I need this to sound good. And you and I had talked about it, and we figured out kind of the tones we were looking for, which very much inspired by traditional Japanese music in many regards. And so, I going into this, I knew, like, I need a full score. I need this to sound the best I've ever done. Like, this needs a score to go with it to really provide what I want. And so when we finally got the score decided, and you gave me the first demo track, I remember being like, this is perfect. And one of my favorite things was, I had watched the short film probably 100 times before music even got added, because I was doing color grading, color correction, editing,
Mhm.
sound mixing, all that. I had all of that before I even really had the score in hand. And then I sent you the work print. I gave you kind of the notes I had, of like missing shots, missing sounds. And you a couple days later, you had most of the score done. And I remember listening to it for the first time in Danny's car as we were driving from the airport. And I remember thinking, there's no way this is for my short film because of how perfect it was. It hit exactly what I was looking for. It was the exact tone I wanted. And then when I finally could sync it with the footage, suddenly the movie had a voice. Like, of course, you had dialogue, you had folly, you had the monster sounds, but the short film finally had the voice I had been missing in every viewing prior. It had it was perfect. It had exactly what it was missing. And so, this is one of those examples of, I truly believe that a score for a film is what gives a movie its voice. That is what creates the undertones of the film. It's what helps you feel what you're wanting to feel. And so I think in many regards, like, your score made me appreciate just music in general for film because of how impacting it was on me as the director, somebody who had wrote the film, already had the film in his head, like shot it, edited it, like done all of that. And then to have the music completely recontextualize my opinions of what we had just done, it meant a lot to me. And it really kind of shaked my world with how much it changed everything. So I was really happy to see the score bring that to the table, something that I had no expectation of.
I was very, very, very relieved that you not only were okay with it, but that you enjoyed it. It was something we had talked about. It was kind of a given. I would have had my feelings a little hurt if you had gone with somebody else to do the music, although I would have understood. I'm not really a musician. I can't play music. I can't read music. I just started doing this sort of basically on accident with you. And over the years, I've been getting a little bit better, and you've been getting way better at filmmaking. And it's just been this, evolving together. And so when you told me you were doing a short for G Fest and we were talking, just shooting the shit, talking about other shit, I was like, obviously offers on the table. If you need me to do any music for you, I can. And then you started telling me some ideas you had and talking about the film itself and the structure, and that there would be a monster. And so the first thing, I immediately, I needed something to compare it to. What is a sound that you're going for? Because I don't want to, I could go off on my own and give you a complete electronic score or something. And that wouldn't be good for you to have to tell me at 0 hour that you need something different. So I really wanted to get not only the music right, but importantly, the monster theme. Because that's, in addition to the roars and everything, that was going to be the sound of the monster, and in essence, the sound of the movie. So that was by far the song that I had worked the longest and the hardest on. And I'm pretty happy with how I got it. I sent you an early demo. You gave me some suggestions and I went back and tweaked some things, but I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. The monster stuff at the end and the end credits music, it's, two similar versions of the same song. But with everything else, it was, I didn't have a whole lot of time. You were sending me stuff as you had it. And, what I wanted to do was, I had some music that you had given me for reference, just in general, what you wanted the soundscape to be. And I had a page full of notes that, we talked on the phone, and I just wrote down like every word you said and circled things, and, just trying to map it out in my head, what it should sound like versus what it shouldn't. And really what I wanted to do was just sort of make the film sound how it looked. if that made any sense. You told me, grand sort of adventurous stuff in the beginning, and I saw the footage that you had, and I was like, I think I can try to communicate what I'm seeing into something you can hear. And it was fun. I've never done something like this before. I've made one song at a time, but I've never gone through an entire film and made music to it. And it was interesting. I'm really, really glad that you're happy with it. If we have to do it again, I'm there for it. Gladly do it again.
I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, I told this to you and Danny when right after you finished the movie, but I was like, one day Elijah's going to make a film and he's going to realize he has gotten way too good for my shitty music. But we'll keep waiting for that day, I guess. So we have passed an hour 46. We're officially the longer of the two streams that you've done. Sorry, Michael. So, do you have any parting words? Would you like to play the clip again? How do you want to close this out?
Well, I guess what I would like to know, I'm gonna flip this onto you.
Okay.
As not only as you influence production obviously a lot. You basically helped create the entire technical side, and you gave tips and pointers that were invaluable for the sound mixing, and you created the score for it. Why should somebody go see this? Speaking more as somebody, as a film maker yourself, as somebody who knows and understands film, why should somebody go see this?
So obviously I think Giant Monster fans would be listening. I think it sort of explains itself why somebody like that should go see it. It's refreshing to see somebody who is a genre fan putting their mark on the genre and doing something new. It's a new Giant Monster related thing. Obviously that's exciting in and of itself to a certain degree. A lot of people know you at this point. Obviously those people should see it to support you, but also something that I've been a part of is just watching your creative journey take place and watching your knowledge and experience just go up exponentially. And that's been really gratifying to see. And if I've had any part in helping, I'm glad I can do it. But you're very eager to learn stuff, which is great. There's never been a moment where I just give you an idea you flat out reject. It's always you want to know more. You want to know why certain things are done. You like taking influence from other things. I think this film is a crucial stepping stone in your creative career. It's a first for a lot of things, and I think it's a sign for things to come. Maybe third more generally because it's good. Because I said it's good, people should go see it. It's going to be fun, especially if I could go to G-Fest this year. I would absolutely love to see that with a crowd. Unfortunately, I can't, but those are something so I can get an idea of the response. But it's the culmination of not only your work or my work, but just a lot of people's work. You've wrangled a lot of talent. And a lot of people have helped to make this film better than something that anybody could have made alone. And I think it's really fun to see. I was, as soon as you told me you wanted to do something with a practical monster suit, I was like, I just want to know what that looks like. I just want to see it. I want to see it now. And so it was super fun to get that as it was happening. I saw everything basically. I was watching the dailies basically. You were sending me everything that you had and as you were getting it. Yeah, watch it because it's good.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I do appreciate that. That was very kind of you. Thank you. Well, that's about all I got. I mean, I could throw out my shameless self promotion as some people we know might describe it as, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, go ahead. What I might do is I think I'm gonna throw this, let's see. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this up with no sound on. You can go ahead and talk over it just for something for the people at home watching.
Yeah. So here, do you want to start at the beginning here so I can kind of,
Yeah,
I
sure.
guess, do a little bit of a commentary, a little 30-second commentary here?
Okay. Let me try to add it back. And then once that wraps up, you can start doing your promotion.
So for
Okay.
anybody at home, I pulled a clip from the later half of the film to kind of showcase our ensemble cast and one of the props made for the film. Like I said earlier, the breakaway statue that we had in our four main characters, Matt, Jake, Aaron, and Alex. And so what we're seeing here is we have all of our characters. Here we go. Once it pulls up
You want me to
here.
leave the volume on?
We can, yeah. So as they get up and they go into this kitchen, they accidentally knock down the statue, and as it breaks open, they find the next prop that Danny made, which was a little scroll here with a little hint of what's to come with the monster. As our characters look at it, they kind of do a little bit of exposition dump, kind of giving you that context of the monster. And we hear some of your beautiful music, Gratton. This is some of my favorite in the entire movie. The ambience of it is truly remarkable. Uh, I love it. It's got that synth behind it. I love synth. It's perfect. Um, in the stuff that you just watched, I tried to make it a little darker. It's kind of warm. All the lighting's a little warm. Because I just wanted to give it that kind of, I don't know, eerie feeling. I feel like when you have something that's kind of more of a cool color, it's a little harder for it to be eerie. It's more scary. But when it's a little warmer, it's like, wait a minute, this is warm lighting. Like, I should feel comfortable, but with the music and everything else, the way the lighting is specifically done, it's very, I would say, eerie. Something that's like, okay, so something's wrong here. And at the end of the day, that's what I want people to know, is that something's not right with what they're doing. Something's not right in this circumstance. And it really gets hammered home, I think, with the musical score itself. So that's the about 35 seconds worth of Edo Kami no Gyakushu. There's about 5.5 more minutes worth. Hopefully, anybody who watched that, if you're going to G Fest, definitely check it out. It will be showing at the amateur video contest, which is on Sunday, starting at 11:30 a.m. and it runs till 1:30 p.m. I will be recording the live reaction. I don't know if I'll be able to post it, simply because I don't know where this film will end up after mid-July. Hopefully, it doesn't end up on YouTube and it goes out into some film festivals and gets shown around a little bit. Like Gratton said, not to, pat myself on the back, but it does feel like this is about 5 years worth of countless, trying to work things out, trying to make it happen, trying to really make it work, and learning the technical and creative aspects of filmmaking. I think that it is the culmination of that. And I hope that people will see that if they've followed my work at all. If not, I hope you're impressed with what happens after 5 years of just kind of figuring it out as you go, I guess. And And yeah, I hope that if you go to G Fest, you see it, come say hi. I'll probably wearing something similar to this. um, it's going to be a good time, and I can't wait for the audiences to see it, and hopefully they enjoy it. So that's about all I got.
Do you want to do your normal? I'm Elijah Thomas. I have a kaiju problem or whatever.
Yeah, my name is Elijah Thomas, and I have a kaiju and tokusatsu problem. Joking aside, I am Elijah Thomas. I co-host the podcast Kaiju Conversation with my co-host and good friend Rex. We cover the wide world of tokusatsu, from kaiju and giant monsters to henshin heroes and J-horror. You can find us on any podcast platform you use. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at kaiju_converse on all of those platforms. I'm also a part of the rotating hosts for Monsters with Attitude. You can check us out on YouTube, where we do monthly live streams talking kaiju entertainment. I'm also a writer. I've written for GodzillaMovies.com, Kaiju Ramen Magazine, and currently I write for Kaiju United. My writing's also been featured in the book Giant Bug Cinema, a Monster Kid's Guide from Bear Manor Media, where I wrote about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Outside of writing and podcasting, I've also served as a consultant on the upcoming Titanic Creations officially licensed Yongari figure, which passed its crowdfunding goals. The entire package is unlocked, and it's available for purchase at titanicreations.com/Yongari, which is YONGARY. So go order yours today. I've also had the privilege to produce bonus features for SRS Cinema. I've worked on Yuzo, the Biggest Battle in Tokyo, Liverleaf, and the upcoming War of the Ninja Monsters, Jiron vs. Gora, which you can all order on srscinema.com. I'm also a filmmaker, as we've established, and YouTuber. You can check out some of my stuff on my YouTube channel, ET13 Productions, where you can see some of my short films and older YouTube videos, along with an ever-growing playlist of videos that I've appeared in. I do need to post some of my older short films now that I'm out of school, just to throw them out there so people can watch them. I do plan on eventually doing that, so definitely stay tuned for that. I've also appeared in an actual kaiju movie, little-known film called Zillafoot from 2021. I made a cameo in the film as Skywatcher number 2. It's got a rating of 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb, so if you want to watch more kaiju, you can buy that Blu-ray on srscinema.com or the DVD from any major online retailer, or just go watch it for free with ads on Tubi, or go buy it on Amazon Prime. Outside of that, you can also check out my action figure photography on my Instagram, which is ET13_productions, and my ex, the artist formerly known as Twitter, thanks Danny, at the same handle. And that's all of my shameless self-promotion.
Okay. I don't think I really need to do any. I'm Gratton. I'm the co-host of Giant Monster BS, and I have a YouTube channel called He's Passed. If you like funny videos about Alec Baldwin, maybe check that out. If you like Amityville movies and horror movies, check out our other podcast, sort of a sister podcast to Giant Monster BS, that only takes place during the months of October. It's a once-a-year podcast where we put out about somewhere around 10-15 reviews each year. We started as Amityville, and now we've branched out to art house horror, stuff like Hammer horror, cult horror, just horror. So if you like that and you like our style of commentary, check that out. We've got a lot of episodes over there. Other than that, there's nothing you need to know about me. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Dun, dun, dun.